Even though the Hawkeyes have a bye week, we're here for another episode of Incompetent Sports Talk. Welcome to another edition of Incompetent Sports Talk, along with Mike Rabin and Jake Burgers. I'm Alex Salzma. The Iowa Hawkeyes dominated the Penn State Nittany Lions 24-3 in a sold-out Kinnick Stadium. The Hawkeyes have now beat Penn State in 8 of the last 9 meetings. It was vintage Iowa defense. They only gave up 54 yards on the ground. Adrian Claiborne, 10 tackles. And how about James Morris, the freshman, Mike? Coming in, having a big game with 7 tackles.
Absolutely the next man in mentality. We saw Troy Johnson get in there, make some nice plays as well for an injured Jeff Tarpinian. But all in all, I think the Iowa coaching staff just out-coached the Penn State coaching staff. I mean, when you look at the talent levels, they're fairly similar. Iowa just came in with a better game plan. You could tell at the end of the game, Joe Paterno, 4.5 minutes to go on the 48-yard line, down 2 scores, they punt the football. It just didn't seem like Penn State was all there mentally, not only from a player perspective, but from a coaching perspective. And we could say a lot of things about the defense. I mean, they had to play tremendous football. Adrian Claiborne, Defensive Player of the Week in the Big Ten. If the defense continues to play this way all season, we're gonna be tough to beat.
Jake.
It was great to see Adrian Claiborne get a big game because actually this was his first sack of the season that he got against Penn State. It was great to see him get Defensive Player of the Week. It really helps, too, when you have a senior leader like Ricky Stanzi at the helm of quarterback. You saw him completely outplay Robert Bolden, who's going to be a very good quarterback down the road, but he's just not there yet. It's very tough as a true freshman. The only negative I came away with this game is our running game really struggled. And I know Penn State has a good defense, but the only running back that got any carries was Adam Robinson. He had 28 carries for 95 yards, which isn't a bad game, but that's only 3.4 yards per carry. I'm not sure if he'll be able to go the rest of the season without getting injured. Hopefully we could get some of our other running backs some opportunities, maybe Brad Rogers, Marcus Coker down the line. But I would like to see a better running game from Iowa.
Also, too, we haven't mentioned this yet, but how about that goal line stand? There in the third quarter, Christian Ballard making the goal line saving tackle. Also, Jeremiah Hunter made some contact initially, too. How about that goal line stand? That's why I love watching Iowa defense. You know, every year we have a couple just great goal line stands that you remember.
Yeah, I mean, there's different circumstances behind all these goal line stands, but you think of Syracuse from a few years ago, a big goal line stand in overtime for a win, and you also think of Michigan State last year on the road, the Hawkeyes stopping Michigan State at the goal line 4 straight plays to hold them to a field goal, and ultimately that was huge in the end because we won on the last play of the game. So again, the defense just coming up and showing how talented they really are, particularly the defensive line. Again, if they continue to play that way all year, we're going to be in good shape here at Iowa.
Yeah, and you see a lot of defensive stands like that when you have such a good defensive line. I think we have the best defensive line in the country right now, and I really wasn't that surprised to see us hold that Penn State on 4th and goal from the 1 with how good our defensive line is.
Also, too, we kind of talked about a similar situation with Iowa State. Iowa State tried to get that last touchdown against, our reserve defense. Now, Penn State, not against our reserve defense, but 1 second to go on the clock, Joe Paterno calls timeout, tries to get a touchdown, but yet with 4 minutes to go in the game from the 48-yard line, he's punting the football. Why is Joe Paterno going for a touchdown? I mean, is this some type of moral thing? Is it a mental thing? I mean, why go for a touchdown there at the second?
I think he just, wanted to give Kevin Newsom a chance to maybe redeem himself from the interception earlier in the game. I know he came in, in the fourth quarter for Robert Bolden. I don't think there was any continuity. I don't know if there was any really huge factor behind it. I just think Penn State just was finally moving the football a little bit, and they wanted to keep trying to do it and see if they could get a score. I think there's a difference between what happened there and what happened in the Iowa State game at the end.
Yeah, it might have been something for moral support. You heard Paul Rhodes after the Iowa State game say that it was finally nice to get a touchdown against Iowa, and that might have been what Penn State was trying to do. To that point, they only had 3 points. They ended the game with 3 points. If they would have got it in the end zone, it might have uplifted them a little bit morally, spiritually, but they didn't, and I'm glad they didn't.
Penn State has not scored a touchdown on Iowa since the first play of last year's game. Before we go to our next topic, how about the black and gold alternating sections I'll admit, I was a little skeptical going into the game. I didn't know if everybody was going to get the memo or if everybody's going to know about it. And you knew it was going to be a cold night in Kinnick Stadium. You didn't know if people would have jackets on that throw it off, but Kinnick looked awesome. And then when I got to see the game again, we DVR'd the game, it looked even better on TV.
Agreed. I think the stadium looked great. Hats off to the fans and to the sports athletic department, marketing, all those people who were able to put that together and coordinate that. It was a wonderful, wonderful scene there in Kinnick Stadium.
Right now, we're going to go on to a new little segment, I guess you can call it, Fantasy College Football. So we're going to assemble a fantasy college football team. We're going to go through different units, different positions, and if you could have your pick of anybody in college football currently playing right now, who would you take? So we'll start at quarterback. If you could take any quarterback in the country, who would you take? I'll start off first. I'm going to take Greg McElroy over at Alabama. Why? Because the guy just wins football games. He has not lost a game since he's been in the 8th grade. I think that's enough said right there. Also led Alabama to a national championship last year. This year, right now, they're undefeated. This is a great football team. You know, I don't think everything needs to go into all the stats and stuff. The guy hasn't lost a game since the 8th grade. Mike, who do you take?
I'd take Kellen Moore, Boise State. 75 touchdowns to only 14 interceptions in now 2.5 years as starter at Boise State. He's 30-1. You talk about a winner. He's done a great job there. I know they play in the WAC, but Kellen Moore has a lot of NFL potential. And if I could take anybody right now with his mechanics and his ability to be a winner, I like Kellen Moore at Boise State.
Jake.
Well, this pick might be unpopular to some people in Iowa City and other people in the Big Ten, but I'm going to take Denard Robinson. He has put up some ridiculous numbers so far. He's actually leading the country in rushing, and he can throw the ball too. He's 4th in the nation in passing efficiency. He's put up just ridiculous numbers. I think he broke another record last week, becoming the first NCAA football player to throw for 200 yards and run for 200 yards in the same game twice. No, I don't believe any other player has done that, not even Pat White in the past. Under Rich Rodriguez. Denard Robinson, he has not played some great defenses so far, but the stats that he's putting up and putting Michigan on his shoulders with how bad of a defense Michigan has, he has been really impressive so far.
Now let's go to running backs. I'm going to stick with the Alabama theme. I'm going to take defending Heisman Trophy winner Mark Ingram. Jake, who would you take at running back?
I'm going to go a little off the radar. I'm going to take DeMarco Murray from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. He's a very explosive back, and the reason I'm taking him isn't just for his rushing ability, but also for his receiving ability out of the backfield. He had over 500 yards of receiving yards last year. He's a great threat, dual threat as a running back. I like DeMarco Murray a lot.
I'm with you, Alex. I like Mark Ingram at Alabama, the indefatigable running back. He gets the job done. He just mentally, I think it's what impresses me the most. I mean, he obviously has great athletic ability, great upper body, lower body strength. His center of gravity is what you want in a running back. But mentally, I think he stands out above the rest of the running backs in America.
Receiving core now. I'm going to go with Arkansas. When Houston Nutt was at Arkansas, they primarily liked to run the ball a lot, and it worked. But now Bobby Petrino's there. He has a little different philosophy. He likes to air the ball out. First of all, they have a great quarterback, but they also, I think, have the best receiving core in college football with Greg Childs, Joe Adams, a great tight end, and DJ Williams. I really like what they do. They were pretty young last year. All those guys are back this year, having a great year. I like Arkansas's. Mike, who do you take?
You know, I like Arkansas too. That was my number one pick, but just to break it up a little bit, I'll go Michigan State. I think they have a tremendous quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and then their receivers, Mark Dell, B.J. Cunningham, Charlie Gant, a top 10 tight end looking at next year's draft. They've got a lot of potential there, too, and a lot of really good players. But I think Arkansas, definitely number one.
Jake.
I'm going to go off the map a little again, too. I'm going with Notre Dame. They have Michael Floyd and Kyle Rudolph, who are arguably the best players at their position at wide receiver and tight end in the country. They're not going to put up the stats that the wide receivers are going to put up at Arkansas because Notre Dame does not throw the ball as much. They're breaking in a new quarterback in Dayton Christ, who does have a lot of talent. But when you talk about Michael Floyd and Kyle Rudolph being arguably the best players at their position, and they're not even leading the team in receptions right now. Actually, Theo Riddick is. They have a lot of depth at wide receiver and tight end and a lot of talent. I like Notre Dame's receiving core.
Yeah, good choices by all of you. Let's now go to defensive units. I'm going to go with Alabama. And I know I've been giving the Tide a lot of love, but they're the defending national champions, and they are currently undefeated right now in college football. But they do lead the nation in scoring defense, only giving up 9.0 points per game, 45 total points in 5 games. The Crimson Tide have not allowed an 100-yard rusher in 39 straight games. That's the longest streak in college football right now, and the second closest is Ohio State with 28. I know they're young, but they're really good. Jake, which D unit do you like?
Well, I'm wearing an Iowa tie, and I'm going to go with the Iowa defense. They rank second in the country in scoring defense next to Alabama, who does have a very good defense. However, the Iowa defense would rate even better in scoring defense if they had not allowed all those special teams points against Arizona. They also rank in the top 5 in total defense. In my opinion, they have the best defensive line in the country, which is where it all starts. At linebacker, they have a lot of new players coming in. We saw James Morris as a true freshman really step up against Penn State. A lot of talent at linebacker position, and then a lot of experience in the secondary. You have Tyler Sash, who, when he leaves Iowa, might be the all-time leading Iowa player in terms of interceptions. Sean Prater's had an excellent year so far. Brett Greenwood came in as a walk-on, has really proven himself. He's a veteran leader in that secondary. Overall, Iowa has a very good defense, and in my opinion, it's the best in the country.
I completely agree with everything Jake said. I chose Iowa as well, but I go a little different here, and this is difficult because we're not seeing it this year. But I think at the beginning of the year, before all the NCAA infractions, North Carolina had the best defense in the country. I know we can't make that argument now because a lot of the players aren't playing, but if you look at North Carolina's defensive line, they were just as good as Iowa. You look at the secondary and the linebackers, just as good or better than Iowa. So for the beginning of the year, you take away the NCAA infractions, North Carolina the best defense in the country, I think. But I agree with Jake. Iowa is my pick now.
And you can't have a good offense without a good offensive line. So now we got to talk about offensive line. I'm going to go with the offensive line. It has a lot of experience, a combined 93 starts coming into this season, and that's from the Ohio State Buckeyes. A lot of people look at Ohio State and they're afraid of Terrell Pryor because he's dual threat quarterback. They're afraid of receivers like Posey. They're afraid of running backs like Herron. But that offensive line is scary. It might be Tressel's best offensive line since he's been at Ohio State. Jake, which offensive line do you like?
Well, I'm going to stick in the Big Ten, but I'm not going to pick Ohio State. I'm actually going to pick Wisconsin. Wisconsin has been the top running team in the past 2 years in the Big Ten. 3 years ago, they were number 2. This year, they're number 2, and they're only number 2 because Denard Robinson at Michigan is putting up so many rushing yards. If you look at actual running back production, John Clay and the freshman James White, they're running behind a terrific offensive line with Gabe Karimi and John Moffitt. They're the best O-line duo in the country. They're going to be first-round draft picks next year. They have a lot of talent on that line.
Yeah, Jake and I are once again in agreement. I think if you look at Ohio State and you look at Wisconsin, 93 starts at Ohio State, 107 starts at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, the reason John Clay and James White have so much success is because of that offensive line. You saw Sean Green have success at Iowa because of the offensive line. It plays a huge role into some of these running backs. I like Wisconsin as well.
And those two teams will square off in about 2 weeks down in Madison. That ought to be a good one. Now let's go to field goal kickers. A field goal kicker, you kind of take advantage of them while they're there if they're really good. And when you don't have a good field goal kicker, you wish you had one. If I could pick one, I'd take Kai Forbath over at UCLA. This guy was the Girls Award winner last year, was 28 for 31. All of his misses were from beyond 50 yards. Coming in, actually, until the second game of the year versus Stanford this season, he had made 40 field goals in a row that were 50 yards or less, which is just unbelievable for a kicker to do that. This year, he is currently 8 for 10, but I think he's going to have another great year. Last year, I believe field goal percentage, well, I guess if you take the numbers, it was a little over 90%. I'd probably expect him to do something like that again this year. Maybe UCLA, they'll be in that ultra-tight Pac-10. Maybe that field goal kicking could get him a win or two. Mike, who do you got?
I like Josh Jasper at LSU. He's 24 of 29 in his career. And when you look at the reason he makes such a difference is because LSU's offense, 112th in the country passing the football, running the football, mediocre. So they kick a lot of field goals. Josh Jasper's consistent, kicks the ball accurately. He kind of reminds me of Lee Tiffin, who spent 4 years at Alabama kicking the football. I like Josh Jasper, another great SEC kicker.